Welcome to this hearty, boosted band of Rotarians and guests here for our 5,328th meeting. As you can see, I am not Steve Borkenhagen. I am your President-elect, Sal Pizarro. Steve is out sick this week. So I'm your latest contestant in our rotating game of Rotary President musical chairs. Last week, past President Fernando Zazueta filled in for Steve and did an admirable job, although we certainly learned a lesson that I think Fernando finds it much easier to cut people off on Zoom than in person. But that was great because it was a wonderful program, and I really enjoyed it. I'm getting her book from the library today. And for those of you joining us on Zoom, there's nothing wrong with your connection. There is indeed a lot of hair on my face. This is part of my New Year's resolution to be more lazy this year, and that's a resolution that Leslie Hamilton tells me I'm going to have to break before my term starts on July 1st. But now I'd like to welcome any visiting Rotarians and guests to come to the microphone and please introduce yourselves. I know we have a few. Mark?
President-elect Sal, I want to introduce to you my better half, Jeannie Lazzarini. Jeannie is also a math curriculum consultant, which then I often refer to her as a math evangelist.
We need more of those. Welcome, Jeannie.
President-elect Sal, Mike Block Construction. My pleasure again to reintroduce Anna Malara Glenn from Sacred Heart Community Service here in San Jose.
Great to see you again, Anna. Okay, that looks like it. Well, Mark, you were just up. You're coming up again with Larry Keckler and Norm Holberg. I'd like to invite them up to talk about John Brezzo, who sadly we lost. And of course, we have members of John's family here.
John Brezzo, what a great guy. Okay, John, gone too soon. Such a great guy. I want to introduce, we've got John's wife of 45 years, Bonnie, is here, and his son, Pietro. There are three other children that couldn't be here, Susan, Stephen, and Marley. John, he wouldn't like to be called a Renaissance man because that sounds too much like somebody that would drink Sauvignon Blanc with a pinky raised. John was a sturdy guy with a gravelly voice and a tough guy. He loved to travel. He loved to hunt. He fished all over the world, cutthroat trout in Ketchum, where he hosted the Rotary Ski Club for a wonderful event, and John and Bonnie, and off catching, I don't know what fish in Tanzania and Tanzania, bonefish in Cuba. I don't even know what a bonefish is. It doesn't sound very good, but that's probably why he always did catch and release. But John had a great sense of humor. He loved to travel, and one of my memories of John was when he and Bonnie traveled all around the world, hopscotching to all the places that people wouldn't normally have a chance to see in a lifetime. And they did this hopscotch. I said, John, wow, all around the world, that sounds expensive. With this little pie-eating grin, he said, I got 50% off. I said, John, how'd you do that? He said, well, if it had to come out of my estate, I would have to pay 50% taxes. So John's gone from us too early, but he did manage to evade those taxes. Okay, Mark.
So when I think of John, I can't help but think of a typical greeting he had for me. It's like, hey, paisan, how's it going? John was not a business partner of mine. I just more or less followed in John's footsteps. Just that John was miles and years ahead of me. I first met John in '79, just before he left the city of San Jose to create a partnership with Chuck Davidson and DKB Homes, which became one of the top 10 home builders in the Bay Area. In my mortgage banking career, I was fortunate to see most of John's developments. John and I also share the fact that we both created nonprofits to do affordable housing. I did follow John, although 43 years later, to also become a partner with Chuck Davidson in creation of Dow Properties. We lost Chuck last year at the age of 90. John was also my Rotary sponsor in 1993, and I remember John's fireside dinner that he had at Via Brezzo. And I thought to myself, wow, what a beautiful home, and even the street is named after him. So, while I was helping John do a wine punch down, I marveled at his winemaking skills. And then I laid eyes on John's pizza oven and bocce court. And while I don't ever expect to be living on Via Lazzarini, John did inspire me to reach my goal of owning my own pizza oven and bocce court. John was active in the Boy Scouts, serving as a Silicon Valley Monterey Bay Council board member. And as current board member, and on behalf of myself and the staff and the board, we appreciate his contributions. And I do have a resolution of respect from the board, which I'll give to Bonnie and family later. And how lucky John was to have a wonderful life partner and soulmate in Bonnie. We both were lucky and excelled in that category. His passing is just another poignant reminder to appreciate those around you that have influenced your life and served as great role models in the pursuit of career, passion, and importance and love of family. While I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts of John with you, my regret is that I did not take the time to share these thoughts and what he meant to me with him. I will miss John.
Well, I started working with John Brezzo 35 years ago. He came as accountant probably around 1986. A year or two after that, he came to me and he said, David Neal, another Rotarian, and I started this little nonprofit. That little nonprofit is First Community Housing, and it has grown into an amazing organization. It has built probably 1,700 units of affordable housing for families, for seniors, for special needs folks. And currently it's under the leadership of another one of our Rotarians, Jeff Morgan, and they're looking at probably 1,400 units in a pipeline. Pretty incredible from a little startup by John and David. And a year after he and I started working on his personal stuff, he came to me and he said, Larry, David and I want you to be the accountant for community housing. And I said, John, I don't know a lot about nonprofits and not a lot about development yet, and I sure as hell don't know anything about these funny tax credits you guys use. And he looked at me and he said, you'll learn. And that was John. He wanted to get something done, and he went at it. He could be brusque at times. He could be pushy at times. He could be a pain in the ass at times. He could be ornery. Gosh darn it. But he did get things done. But there was also another side to him. There was a patient John. You might not have seen it, but then you might have. If you were a friend. See him teaching a friend to fish in an Idaho stream. He had a soft side with his dogs. He was a sturdy trainer. I mean, he was a disciplinarian with them, but they figured out how to get in there to that soft side. And they wanted to play. They figured out a way to get him to play. So that was also John Brezzo. And I think a strong memory that I'll always carry from last year is sitting around the table off the kitchen at the Almaden house that he and Bonnie had. Out of this great plate glass window looking at the grass and the hills and trees that he loved. And we sat there, finished our work on taxes, and we started reminiscing about fishing and duck hunting and friends. And we started to talk about Bonnie. and I watched this light come into his eyes, and I watched this smile creep into his voice. And then I knew how much this guy loved Bonnie. He really loved you. I mean, he could be a pain in the ass. I know that. He could be crotchety, but he sure loved you, Bonnie. It was pretty special. And well, I'm going to break ranks here in the vein of John Brezzo, and I'm taking an extra minute. And I'm going to read you the lyrics of a song that many of you may recognize that I think captures a lot about him. You may recognize. And now the end is here, and so I face that final curtain. My friend, I'll make it clear. I'll state my case of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more. I did it my way. Regrets I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without exemption. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall and did it my way. For what's a man, what has he got? If not himself, then he has not. Not to say the things that he truly feels, not the words of someone who kneels. Let the record show I took all the blows and did it my way. God bless John Brezzo. May you find a lot of good fishing streets in the world beyond.
John, you will be missed. And sadly, I must also let you know, as many of you already do, that we did lose another Rotarian over the recent few weeks. Dion Campisi passed away on December 20th, and a eulogy will be scheduled for him soon as well. Now we will turn to introducing a new member. I'd like to invite Catherine Tonkinson up to the, or she's on Zoom, I think, yes. And she'll
That's
be
correct,
introducing Robert Davis. So Catherine, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, welcome, President-elect Sal and fellow Rotarians. It's my honor, pleasure to introduce Robert Davis. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but I thought I would, in the little time I have, tell you two fun facts about Robert. He's quite an athlete. He'll tell you about that. But I was fascinated that he had the privilege of snowboarding in Dubai some years ago. I thought that was really intriguing. And the other is that he has an uncredited appearance in the Bourne Supremacy. So the Jason Bourne movie series, he and his ship, the USS Boxer, it's a WASP class ship, was in Goa, India. And Bourne Supremacy was being filmed. And you probably, if you looked very carefully, could see him aboard his ship in the background. So those are two fun facts about Robert. I'll yield the rest of my time so Robert can tell you a little bit about himself.
Great. Take it away, Robert.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Catherine, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Robert Davis, and I was born and raised in Northern California, and I grew up on a farm. And I joined the Navy right after high school, and where I served from 03 to 08, and I was on the USS Boxer. And I after the Navy, I decided to continue to give back by serving our student veterans in higher education, and I've been doing that for the last 14 years. And currently, I serve at San Jose State University as the Veterans Counselor and Certifying Official, where I've been there for almost 4 years. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Ayaka, of 6 years, and we have a wonderful son who's 2.5 years old, and his name is Eugene, and he definitely keeps me busy. In my job, I love working with veterans, and I love giving back, and I just love serving them and everything that goes along with that. And part of that giving back is doing a lot of outdoor activities where we go biking, backpacking, hiking, snowboarding. And those are all my hobbies, and I love doing that with my students at San Jose State. I've been to over 28 countries. I love traveling and visiting other countries and cultures and learning about them. It's absolutely fun. I look forward to continue working and serving in our community here at San Jose Rotary Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, and we look forward to getting to know you better. All right, I think Robert counts for me instead of Steve, since I got to introduce him. Okay, next up, Kathy Wiley. Is going to come up and give us an update on the Los Amigos de Washington School Committee. Kathy.
And I show what's up there. So Washington Los Amigos Committee had to pivot, like every committee in Rotary currently. And so we've had to switch what we could do on the school grounds to kind of on the exterior and other things. And our biggest issue is supporting the staff. It's been really hard. You know, last year there was no students, and at the end of the year, they have both in-house instruction and the Zoom instruction, and that was really difficult for the teachers. So one of the first things we normally do in the beginning, of calendar year, in January, we usually hold a teacher appreciation party at the Gordon House, lots of wine, lots of food, lots of fun, which of course we couldn't do last year. So we gave them each gift certificates to do whatever they wanted to at was close to Valentine's when they got it. So what you're seeing here is Crystal Hannerly's class, and she does the special ed students. And this is Crystal showing her gift card, and she took them all to McDonald's, or bought the McDonald's. She couldn't take them there, you know, with her gift certificate. And I had other notes written to me from the teachers. They were just thrilled to be remembered and appreciated. So in August, we normally do the day before school starts is a teacher work day, and we throw a luncheon for them. Unfortunately, none of us took pictures. We were too busy feeding them. So we had a great time, and you know, it worked out because they brought a lot of their own ethnicity food with them. So it was quite interesting, that lunch. And then at Halloween, as we did the year before, we did Halloween trick-or-treat bags for the children. In 2020, the children weren't going to be trick-or-treating at all. We knew some of them would. So the deal was they could come in their costume, because they used to have parades and a big thing for Halloween at the school. And they would come to the front and pick up something. But first we had to pack the Halloween bags. I have a great committee that came and got stuff. Sarah even managed to get 400 hula hoops. So they're going to be distributed separately. So you see the ladies packing, and Lucinda Lawson who's the wife of a member, came up from Morgan Hill to help us pack. And these are some of the things. We had great donations from the Sharks, from San Jose Water, from Green Waste. Green Waste gave us these great coloring books. They were very popular because not only do they get some of the children in their costumes a trick-or-treat bag, but they also get to pick out a book. There's toothbrushes and toothpaste in these bags. You know, we're watching the things. And these are the pictures taken. So the far left is David Binney. He's a Red Badger that came to help. Michelle Ornott, who is a Red Badger, came to help us pack bags. And then the San Jose police are invited to bring their ice cream wagon, and the fire people came. We didn't get any pictures of the firemen, but you'll see on the police their little round necklace type things, and every child got to take one of those home. They're glow in the dark for trick-or-treating purposes. So Shelley McNamara, one of our Rotarians, donated a book, and this is the book that was written by a friend of hers about COVID schooling, and she wanted every fifth grader to have a book. So she donated 80 books, and the day before Thanksgiving, Fran Rushing and I went over and put their names in the book because that was one of Shelley's requests. And so these are some of the children with their books, and I was explaining to them how this came about. We did it in the library. And then in Christmas of 2020, we adopted 8 families, and this year we decided to expand because we hadn't used up all of the budget that I've been carefully hoarding. And so we told the principal, let's expand to 15 families. And she interviews these families to see what their needs are. And essentially our purpose is to give them some cash for Christmas gifts and to also give them enough for a Christmas meal. And so 8 of these families are living in shelters. So one of the requirements is, okay, do you have a place you can cook? So here, this is my son with his project management. He's lined up all the boxes and he's filling them. Bonnie Bamberg bought them cake mixes and frosting, which was a list that we had gotten from social services, and these are some of the things that they could use. Also, I rummaged around and finally found can openers for manual can openers, which are very hard to come by at grocery outlets. So every box had a can opener in it, because obviously if they're in a homeless shelter, we don't know how big their kitchen facility is. But they also get a turkey. And so just before Thanksgiving, when turkeys were on sale, I had recruited a whole bunch of people, because they'd only let me get 2 at a time, to go out and buy turkeys. And we stored them at the at the school for them. The families were overwhelmed, because if there were 8 people in their family, they got $800. And as last year, some of them used to pay back rent, some of them used to pay off cell phone bills, some of them used to pay their car insurance. These are people who are living right on the edge. And so we're hoping that we can continue to expand our Christmas program for these people. And we'd love to have you join us if anybody wants to come work on our projects, because we do have the teacher appreciation party set now for March 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And that's a great example of one of our committees that's doing a lot of good work in the community, and it's thanks to all of you as Rotarians and your contributions to the foundation that help make a lot of this possible, so keep it up. And speaking of all of you Rotarians, next we are going to hear from Matt Bell on membership, which is one of the most important things we have here.
Thank you, President-elect Sal. Just a note to the Brezzo family. Just wanted, from me, thank you for sharing him with us, with this club, with this community, and what an incredible role model I know he was for me and for so many. So thank you. Talking about membership, I thought I would do an update to talk about where we are and some of the things that we have planned. Just some of the numbers, just to keep you posted on our progress thus far. 20 new members this year, so great work so far by all of you and our membership committee. However, we have lost almost twice that number this year, just due to people moving for lots of reasons, leaving the club. So we've got some work to do. We started off the year with 432 members, down to 415 now. So just to break even, another 17 new members before the end of this Rotary year at the end of June. So, but we all, just a reminder too, this isn't just the numbers just because we want to be a large club. There are a lot of benefits of being the size of a club that we are and have been traditionally. Thinking about the great committee work and investment in the community like Kathy and the Los Amigos School that you just heard about. The grants that we do every year, well over 6 figures going back into the community, and attracting incredible speakers like we do week in and week out. We can't do that unless we retain the size of the club that we are, and there are a lot of other reasons for it. So that's why we're really focused on trying to keep track with year in and year out our total membership numbers. So hoping that we can rely on all of you to continue reaching out to people, just like Catherine did earlier with Robert. It's a great example. Thus far, these are the folks that have successfully recruited a new member thus far. So how about a round of applause for all of these people like that? At the beginning of the year, you might recall that Steve and I conducted a little program called Stand Up for Rotary, and asked many of you, and many of you agreed. More than 60 of you have taken the pledge to recruit at least one new member this year. So in order to support those efforts, you saw the people who have already. There are a lot of you that took the pledge that we're still waiting on. If you haven't already, you're going to hear from one of the members of our committee, just reaching out, offering support, encouragement for you to be actively recruiting. If there's someone over the last couple of months, over the holidays, that you thought might be a good Rotarian, we really encourage you to reach out. If for any reason it's not comfortable for you to do so, there are a lot of resources, namely me and our membership committee. Reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect with the person that you're thinking about. But really, one of the things we just encourage you to do, that Catherine did and so many people, just ask the question, talk about Rotary so that people understand what it is. Time and time again, we've heard from new members, maybe what took you so long? And they say, well, no one ever really asked me. So if you're thinking about someone right now, now is the time, because we only have a number of months left to reach our goal. Please do reach out. And again, reach out to me and the membership committee if we can help. If any of you are interested in joining the Stand Up for Rotary, making that pledge and earning one of these very stylish and attractive wristbands that you can wear, please, again, I'm in the book, reach out to me. Happy to add you to the list, and I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And now we're going to hear from Sarah Jannigan about the gala. Sarah, come on up. Yes. Talk about Fernandez, turn back and fight me.
Hi, everyone. I just want to remind you that the gala is gearing up and is scheduled for March 19th. We will have it. Hopefully, it'll be in this room, so we are very excited. Just a shout out to those of you who have donated auction items. Thank you. Thanks. Auction items. We are, again, soliciting items for our auction, which is a large part of the event. So if you are inclined to donate your vacation home, or you have a great bottle of wine sitting in your wine cellar, or want to put together a basket of whatever, or you have merchants and friends who might be willing to donate to the auction, please let either me or Audrey Fox or Nancy know, and we will do the follow-up. We are hoping to have a big and robust auction and a lot of offerings. So if you get a call from us, please don't hang up. We have some ideas about things that might be good, and we may be calling you. So we'll look forward to seeing you all at the auction on the 19th.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'm looking forward to the auction this year. And now, Jason Alexander, could you please come up and introduce our speaker?
Good afternoon. All right. Hello. Yeah, there we go. Hi. One of the fundamental challenges of combating global climate change is that having the science right doesn't in itself guarantee any success at all. I mean, without the science, we wouldn't know anything useful about our problems or about potential solutions to them. But knowing about the problems isn't by itself sufficient for getting anything done. What's also needed are strategies for developing sound public policy as well as raising public consciousness, and, for that matter, marshaling the right sorts of resources to study and deal with environmental policies. So, in short, the field of environmental studies is a field that depends upon expertise in science and engineering, as well as in fields of law, public policy, sociology, psychology, and even rhetoric, fundraising, grant development, that sort of thing. Our speaker today is Dr. Catherine Cushing, a professor of environmental studies at San Jose State University. Go Spartans. There we go. And former executive director of Communiversity, SJSU, an award-winning nonprofit serving low-income residents in central San Jose. One of the reasons that our program committee reached out to Dr. Cushing about speaking with us is because she's very well qualified to be able to speak to the importance of the ways in which those various domains of inquiry and understanding that I mentioned a moment ago intersect in managing what Dr. Cushing calls the wicked problems of the environment, of the environmental challenges that face us today. Dr. Cushing is a nationally recognized expert on sustainability and community-engaged learning and has advised United Nations departments, Fortune 500 companies, the cities of San Jose and Palo Alto, the Army Corps of Engineers, and on and on. Her primary areas of expertise are environmental policy, water resources management, and service learning. Today, Dr. Cushing will be speaking to us about water management issues, why we need to be concerned about both droughts and floods in the Bay Area. I remember seeing cars getting washed away in Santa Cruz recently. That wasn't by climate change, but just a week before that, we did have the king tides, which give us a sense of what rising sea levels are going to look like. So we face both droughts and floods in our area. At any rate, Dr. Cushing will be discussing some examples of concrete ways in which cities and universities in particular can work effectively together, work with government agencies as well as NGOs and nonprofits in addressing these sorts of wicked problems. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cushing to the podium this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm so honored to be invited by the Rotary Club to speak. It's been wonderful to sit at a table with former SJSU colleagues, and I've worked in San Jose since 2003. And I remember as a young candidate for assistant professor coming here for the first time and interviewing for 14 hours straight, and still really wanting to come here and falling in love with the city and the people that live and work here. So it's really, really an honor to be able to address you today. I wanted to talk to you about what we call wicked problems. So those of you that are involved in urban planning may recall this term that was coined in the early 1970s about intractable issues that are multi-sectoral, have many, many different stakeholders, are hard to define, let alone solve. So just today, Katherine talked about supporting some families that are housing insecure. That's an example of a wicked problem. Another one on the environmental side is climate change, right? That's another wicked problem, hard to define, even harder to solve. So if you think about this in the context of US cities, and San Jose, as we all know, is the 10th largest city in the United States, we face insurmountable challenges that have been made honestly much, much worse by COVID-19. We have unhoused populations, we have mounting pension obligations for the city. How does the city meet its affordable housing obligations when the city itself does not build housing? It depends on developers and nonprofits to come in and meet those housing obligations with numbers that are set by the state, right? So you begin to see what I'm talking about when we talk about the concept of wicked problems. It's it's very, very difficult to get a handle on them. So just to set a little bit more context for what we mean about wicked problems in San Jose, I didn't want to be totally negative. I want to be positive with some of this information. So the slide that you see is a list of high resident priorities for our resident. Okay. First among them, it's pretty intuitive. Residents want to feel safe. They want to feel economically stable. They want their utilities to work. And they also value the quality of the natural environment. And increasingly, that's kind of coming into question. How many of you were worried about the wildfires, right, and had to stay inside? Yes, okay. So, I mean, things like that really hit home. And I don't know how many of you were in San Jose in 2017. Does anybody remember the President's Day flood in 2017? That was nuts, okay? We can maybe talk later after lunch. That was totally crazy, where you have residential neighborhoods and the Olander Elementary School literally flooded. Crazy stuff is going on. So, I would add to this list also emergency event planning, lots and lots of things. So you begin to get an idea of almost the impossible tasks that cities have before them, where they have limited budgets and they have this very long list of resident to-dos. How can they possibly meet those? In a similar vein, universities are charged with almost impossible tasks. At San Jose State, just across the street, can anybody guess how many students do we have? Do we know? It's 2,030. Oh, okay, someone in the back has raised their hand, yes. What's your guess? Yeah, it was in the 1980s. All right, how many students do you think we're serving, y'all? 35,000, oh, yeah, very nice. Okay, so 36,000 students. Okay, so back in the day before COVID, it was like a small city would come to campus, right? And Tim, I don't know if Tim's here, but yes, so Tim probably remembers that during the first 2 weeks of class, it's kind of like open season on parking spots. So you like either get to campus by like 6 o'clock, or you park really, really far away on South Campus and it takes you like 30 minutes to get to campus. So, definitely, parking is always a challenge at universities, but more so because of COVID, and this is just an observation that I've had with fellow chairs, because now I'm the chair of the Environmental Studies Department. I think because of COVID, the students, they felt like they didn't get what they wanted out of the university experience, because the last 2 years, honestly, has really sucked. And we're doing our best. We're engaging with students online. We're meeting them in the field. But honestly, I don't blame them for being upset and for seeking more classes online. We really are challenged with how to do a better job creating more flexible higher education experiences that work for our undergraduates. And maybe Tim, we can commiserate after lunch. I just remember, before COVID, San Jose State was really at the cusp of becoming more of a residential campus. We were becoming a destination of choice. We had built all this new housing. Students were coming on campus, you could just really feel that. And then things kind of stopped. And now students are thinking, hey, do I really want to spend this semester on campus? Or do I want to take my classes online and just carry on and finish my degree? So this is just kind of from the trenches view. And if those of you that have kids or grandkids in college, I feel you. My son is a senior in the CSU, and he's just I really just want an in-person class. So I get that. I feel you. Other key challenges for San Jose State and many other challenges, we're just seeing a very general demographic shift in enrollment. So over the past 2 years, undergraduate enrollment in universities has gone down 7.8%. We're really lucky here at San Jose State because we have a great reputation. People want to come here, but I know that some of our sister CSUs, for example, Sonoma State and East Bay, they're kind of hurting for enrollment right now. So there's fewer students, right? But we still have the same number of universities. So the pie stays the same, and we're all fighting for that piece of pie. So that's one issue. I've already talked about the COVID-19 impacts. And while the state general fund for public education contributes about half of what it costs to educate a student, there's big things and big needs that we want to do for our students, especially underrepresented minorities and first-gen students. So it's been my experience that at least half of the students in my classes are working. And oftentimes they're not just working, for extra pocket money, they're working to support their families. I had a student this semester who was pregnant. She said her goal was to finish and graduate, be able to walk across the stage before her baby was born. She was literally 9 months pregnant in my class. These are very, very, dedicated students, but non-traditional students. So I think that San Jose State is really poised to support those students who really just want to get a BA or BS degree, find a good, well-paying job in the Bay Area with benefits, and raise their families here, as we have all been lucky enough to do. And as I mentioned before, academic success challenges. So academic success, in case you see that word later, it's really like code for graduating in a timely manner. So now you learned something today. And it's particularly hard for underrepresented groups. All right, so the picture that you see behind me is a picture of the Communiversity Steering Committee. So you might recognize Councilmember Perales and some other members of city staff, as well as some city leaders. Basically, Communiversity is a unique public-private partnership made up of members of the university, the city of San Jose, and local resident leaders. So we basically drop a pin in between San Jose State and City Hall. And then, does everybody remember what a compass is? Back in the day, had the pointy end, and then you put out the radius, and then you draw the circle. Okay, so I'm an engineer, so I've talked about these little instruments. So basically, Communiversity's service area is a circle with a radius of 1.5 miles around this nexus between the city and the university. And we really focus on low-income, underserved neighborhoods and residents. So that's kind of who we are. And the impetus behind Communiversity, which began in 2005, was really, can we put the best of San Jose State faculty and students and city and resident leaders and all the schools and nonprofits who are working in Central San Jose, identify the objectives that we want to accomplish, and then do project-based learning that brings together the best of San Jose State faculty and students and puts them out in the community to solve real-world issues that apply to their areas of study. So it sounds kind of simple, and it is simple, but it's actually pretty hard to implement. So I'll explain to you how it works in just a minute. But I think it's very useful in thinking about this through kind of a conceptual lens. So because we've been talking about water issues for the last 6 months, I'd like to use the lens of water issues to see how we can better think about multi-sector collective problem solving. So some of you may be familiar with these graphs or have been watching them. So as a water nerd, one of my favorite sites is the S Drought Monitor. So you can go on this site every 2 weeks and it shows you how much of the state is in what stage of drought, from 0 to 1 to 3 to 4. So up until last month, it was not looking good. We were actually, most of the state was in a state of extreme drought. That's when we have to incur water shortages. Many of you may have gotten notices from your water service provider to reduce residential water use by 15%. And stage 4 drought is also the level at which you have pasture and crop losses. That's not good for a state like California, which produces 10% of the produce for the United States. Now it's much, much better, but I think we can't be complacent about the need for water conservation. Okay, so this is my pun. I usually give my students extra credit if they make a water pun in class. So anyways, I couldn't resist, get it? There's no shortage of water issues and solutions. So if you look at the chart on the left, you'll see that we are no stranger to drought. The state itself has gone through cycles of drought many, many times in the past. And up until the big rainfall in December, a lot of hydrologists and climatologists thought that we may be headed for one of the most severe droughts in 50 years. Luckily, that didn't happen, but we're still not done with this water year. On top of that, I think it's really, I don't know if it's interesting or disconcerting to see that the last drought cycle ended in 2017. So here we are, less than 5 years later, talking again about the need for water conservation. If you factor in other things like with climate change, extreme weather events will be more frequent, right? And more severe. Like, who would have thought that Coyote Creek, this little tiny, sometimes intermittent body of water, was going to flood and cause over $100 million worth of damage? This is the costliest flood in Santa Clara County history. So that's not just the problems, there's also solutions. So the other picture that you see below you is the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. Has anybody heard of this center before? Maybe some of you. Okay, what do you know about it, sir? Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. So basically, we have a facility that can take secondary treated wastewater, so that's water like from your showers, and I'll be honest, like from your toilets, right? Cleans it in the centralized treatment plant, brings it back into the facility, and then using engineering technology, state of the art, can treat it to drinking water standards. And this facility can produce 8 to 9 million gallons per day of water that meets drinking water standards. So the technology is definitely there. It's the policy and regulations that have not caught up with it. So when I talk to my students about this recycled purified water, and I talk to residents about it, residents actually want it, but they can't get it because there's this very, very long regulatory approval process, and we're not quite there yet. So this is just, I wanted to give you an example of a solution and not just a problem, so we could still be optimistic when we left the meeting today. And there's also a larger lens of something called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, that overlays the field of environmental studies and water resources. So this is not so much the case at San Jose State because we have a very diverse student body to begin with. But in general, the field of environmental studies is one of the least diverse in STEM. So for example, in the UK, I think it's less than 3% of the STEM workforce is non-white. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of conversations are being had. And then if you think about it, just like new jobs were created in the vaccine economy, right? Like, who thought that you would be a vaccine event coordinator, that would be a job and could make $25 an hour? Similarly, there's this huge need for jobs in the green economy. So every day we have a listserv in our department. We have about 330 undergraduates where we're constantly putting out internships and job announcements. I'd say probably 30 a day. So for those of you who are on the job market who have some environmental expertise, I just saw that Meta is hiring an environmental manager, a sustainability manager. So that kind of brings me back to, how do we as kind of community leaders think about how do we take a piece of some of these water issues, some of these wicked issues, and think about making an actual difference, like Catherine was talking about with her project. So the way Communiversity works is kind of different than other kind of sponsored project models at universities, because a lot of times you'll have a faculty who has expertise in subject X, Y, and Z, and then they want to do a project, and then they do it in the community. So our model is actually the opposite of that. So what we do is we work closely with community members. So in District 3, which kind of overlays Communiversity's service area, we work with schools and families, resident associations to assess community needs in 3 areas. One is public health and the environment. The second is creating kind of a lifelong culture for education. In our service area, only 18% of the adults have a college degree. So we're really working to change that. And we lead a lot of field trips to San Jose State. And oftentimes the children that are coming to campus have never set foot on the campus before, even though they live less than 2 miles away from San Jose State. And then the third area is neighborhood infrastructure. So we're very fortunate to be gathering here in downtown, but there's areas of San Jose, honestly, where it's a little sketchy. And how can you be asking the parents to provide like more exercise opportunities for their kids when they're working 2 jobs and they don't have childcare and they're worried about their kids just like making it home safely to the apartment after school. Like, these are realities that we face working with our neighbors. I did a study with some environmental services staff and resident leaders several years ago because illegal dumping was a problem. So illegal dumping is, you might like be driving down the street and see a mattress or some cans or things like that. So basically we had identified 3 hotspot areas, and the city wanted us to do a kind of geospatial survey to see if the illegal hotspots that they thought were happening were really happening. And the 3 areas were the Rose Garden area, the area right around San Jose, because they thought it was the San Jose State students throwing their mattresses out as they moved out, and the east side. And what we found out was that illegal dumping was indeed a problem near the university and on the east side, but it actually wasn't an issue in the Rose Garden. It was just that the number of calls they were getting from the Rose Garden was high, and they're using the number of calls as an indicator of the problem. So I'm just sharing that anecdote with you to help you understand that you really need boots on the ground to understand some of these wicked problems and their solutions. And the other thing that I really learned that was very sobering for me when I did that study was we worked with environmental services to think about why we're having so many like big extra bags of garbage on the street. And then we realized that there's as many as 5 families living in a single family house and another family living in the garage. So, that really made me think about what is the root cause. It's not just about reducing illegal dumping, it's about addressing issues of extreme poverty in the community. So it's really been like a great and humbling experience to be able to work with Communiversity and to learn more about the neighbors and the neighborhood. So as I mentioned before, we have a very specific service area, which is 1.5 miles radius around San Jose State. We have our focal areas where we have a very dedicated group of faculty with expertise in this area who want to involve their students at the class level. So this is not just like cherry picking 1 or 2 grad students that are high functioning. It's like actually taking an entire class of sociology students and teaching them how to do resident surveys. And then of course we have faculty members who guide the students through these exercises. So these are just a couple of examples that I wanted to leave you with that are water related, but they can really apply to anything. I have a couple of copies of the Communiversity annual report. So if you in your professional life or your nonprofit or volunteering life have an idea that you'd like to talk to me about, I'm no longer the executive director, but I serve as special advisor to Communiversity, because once you become a Communiversitan, maybe it's like a Rotarian, they like grab onto you and they never let you go. So we have a Watershed in a Box program that engages young students living in underserved neighborhoods with free and STEM education. And we also have a flood education program. So it's really a win-win for the community and for San Jose State. The San Jose State students really gain a lot of self-esteem, applying their expertise and being role models for younger residents. And the younger residents, they learn some really valuable information. We were shocked to learn that a lot of the kids, when we talked about flood emergency and having an emergency plan, they actually didn't know like their full parents' names. They were just like mom and dad. They didn't know their parents' names. They didn't know their phone number. They didn't know the address. They didn't know how to read a map. So these are the kinds of things that we're working on at Communiversity. So I can share more examples of these later if you'd like to talk to me. And then just to close, I wanted to share with you 2 quotes that I think are really meaningful when we think about what is the role that cities and universities can play in helping each other solve our wicked problems. The first quote is from a famed urbanist named Jane Jacobs, and I'll just read it for you because it's something that I really live by. It says, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created for everybody. So that really like sticks with me and keeps me going every day. And then the other quote is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about what does it really mean to educate. And he says, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll be at the speaker's table if you'd like to talk later.
Well, thank you. And I think we have time for a couple of questions. if anyone has any questions from the audience. Anyone? Jason, do we have any from Zoom? We have an observation about labeling the bottles that come out of the purification plant. Ed Korea suggests we label the bottles, get over it. Okay, well, that's a good one. What do you think of that?
Well, it was fun. I was actually at the groundbreaking ceremony when there was like a bunch of elected officials, and the whole plan that Valley Water had, they had a peach tree, because remember, we were in Valley of the Heart's Delight, so they wanted to, every elected official that was there to pour a glass of the treated water on the peach tree. And then somebody got really excited, and all the elected officials actually drank the water. And one of my colleagues is a fellow engineer, and she was sitting there, and like the look on her face was, but it was actually safe to drink, but we didn't think they were going to do that. So I appreciate this idea of the get over it.
Fernando, you've got a question.
Just wondered if there's any effort being made by the state that you know of to figure out how much water is being used, let's say in Southern California, in which they evidently have not reached the kind of cutbacks that we have here in Northern California. You know if there's any efforts that they're perhaps attempting?
Well, I think this goes back to the longstanding issue of like Northern California simply being better than Southern California. So, I mean, a lot of it has to do, 50% of residential water use is outdoors. So you simply cannot, in an arid landscape like LA and San Diego, have a turf lawn anymore. It simply doesn't make sense anymore. So I think you're seeing increasingly people are moving towards a zero escape landscaping. That's going to help a lot, because honestly, for California, most of the uses, that we can control is residential, but where we get the greatest gains will be in agricultural water conservation, because 75 to 80% of the water is actually used by agriculture. It's just we haven't provided them with the right incentives and thought more about water reuse. Good question.
Yvonne?
In my former company, I used to have a public relations company, and we did work for the water district. And one of the things that we did was a lot of research on how people felt about recycled water, and there was this uneasiness about it. And I remember that we came up with a slogan, I guess, that was never applied, by the way, that all water is recycled water. What we do in these very state-of-the-art plants is to accelerate the process of Mother Nature. Basically, the water that comes from the sky is water that has been picked up, by goes to the sky and the clouds, and then comes back as rain. But the water that exists in the planet is the same water that has existed throughout history. And I think it's a very compelling, strong thought that is important for us to keep in mind, that there's no such thing as non-recycled water.
That's a great point. And I think one thing that I try to do in my classes is we revisit the hydrologic cycle, which everybody had to learn in 4th grade. Remember, evaporation, precipitation, condensation, and we overlay that with how human activity has influenced the water cycle. So I think that we all need to go back to school to learn more about how the water cycle works. So I appreciate that. So if anybody wants to take my class in the fall, you can't take it through Open University.
Great. Thank you for today's program and teachings about wicked problems. A couple of announcements before we adjourn. Our district is collaborating with I forgot, Steve even reminded me on my text. A donation has been made in your honor to the Urban Vibrancy Institute, which is working to bring new programs to downtown San Jose and make it a more interesting place. So, on to the blood drive. Rotary District 5170 is collaborating with the American Red Cross on a blood drive this month. If you're interested in donating, you can go to the links listed on the screen, and it's also on the website, and it will be in the bulletin in case if you're not clicking right now. And also, Jannigan Clem, who is here, I think, or she was here, is still looking for a few more participants for her February 9th Love Program, where you can share your love story. Please contact her if you're interested in participating. And finally, next week, our speaker will be NBC Bay Area's Scott Budman, talking about the Theranos trial, which took place down the street from here this year. So that's it. Hope to see you all there. Meeting adjourned.